There's something tasty about the name Hamburg. Would you like cheese on your Hamburg? Tonight, Ron with the Beard, we're reviewing Hamburg. Here you have the table set up for a two-player game of Hamburg. Hamburg is a card-driven point salad game developed by Stefan Feld. And if you've been in the board game space for some time, that sentence might mean something to you. And if it does, you probably have an idea of what's about to come. Point salad is a term board gamers now use, meaning that there are multiple ways to get points. You get points for doing this, points for doing that. It's like a salad of points. Point salad. At the end of 8 rounds, the player with the most points wins. There's a whole laundry list of things that you got to do to begin each round. So to start, the players will draw a hand of 5 cards. If you notice, these cards are all different colors. You get to choose which colors of cards you want to get, and each color deck kind of has a specialty, so you don't know exactly what you're going to get, but you kind of have some mitigation on what type of direction you kind of want to build your engine. There's a little bit of engine building in this because some of these cards contain buildings that you'll build that will give you benefits and powers ongoing throughout the game. Once you've drawn your hand of cards, one player at the table will roll these 6 dice. And then you'll take a look at these. In the black die, you'll put one of these Abbott meeples on the corresponding number on this track here, and that will score bonus points for that particular color of building at the end of the game. More on that later. But placing those Abbotts down at the bottom of the board also act as a timer so you can keep track of how many rounds you played and how many rounds you have left. Next, you'll see if there's any 5 or 6s that were rolled on those dice, and any 5s or 6s, you increase the threat level of that matching color. These kind of represent people in Hamburg. I have buildings catching on fire, civil unrest, and if you don't take care of these elements in your city, then they will end up costing you dearly during the game. Next, players have a chance to advance on the City Hall track, and they will have to pay money equal to all the 1s and 2s rolled. So in this case, there was only 1 rolled, so it would only cost 1 coin to move up on that track. Players will get points at the end of the game for how far up they are on the City Hall track. And then play will begin. You can use this little clock here as a timer, so during the first round you'd remove the 1 o'clock track, then the 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock track. To be honest, I feel like that is unnecessary, and largely you have 5 cards, and every turn you end up spending 1 of your cards. So when you're down to 1 card, you kind of know that you've taken 4 rounds. So during their turns, players can take 1 of 6 actions. One action a player can do is they can discard a card from their hand, and then they will take 3 meeples of the matching color. So if I discard this, I would take 3 pink meeples, put them on my board. Another action the player can do is they can discard a card from their hand, and then they can take money equal to the number of pips on that matching color's die. So if I discard this purple card, I would get $6 because it happens to be a 6 on the die. Another action you could do, discard a card from your hand and then lower the threat level of that matching color. You also gain a point when you do this. And not only do you gain a point, but you keep these threats in check because some of them can be quite nasty, such as famine, like losing all your people on your board, or losing all your money, or losing walls that you built. They're just really bad news and you want to keep them at bay. Another thing you can do is discard a card, and as long as it matches the next color, working your way outwards on your city wall here, you can build a city wall. There are costs on them. The first walls cost 1 coin, then 2 coins, 3 coins, and you want to build these because there are landmarks on those walls that you'll gain 3 points, and if you're the first to build all the way to the end on your board, you get one of these tokens here, and they are in descending order. They're like statues. Depending on the player count, they will change, but usually they're like 9, 7, 2, and 4, I believe, in a 2-player game. So you want to get those done before the other players. So it's kind of a race to get those completed. And another thing you can do is you can construct a building site. Throughout the game, players will be playing cards face down to build building sites. And these will allow the players to then later build buildings on top of them. So what you can do is another action is you can play one of your cards face down to the right of your board, starting a tableau or your little city, but you also have to discard a meeple of that matching color. So I played this pink one here, have to get rid of the pink one. Now I can build a building on top of that. And that is the last action that we have yet to go over. When you build the buildings on these cards though, they don't have to match the same color. So I could maybe build this purple building on top of that pink lot there, and that would cost me $6. Each one of these cards has a cost and typically a victory point value for in-game points. And then at the bottom of them, all of the cards will have some kind of either zany scoring at the end or give you a special ability, or sometimes it's a one-time bonus. Now, similar to building those buildings on the right-hand side, you can also build parks and zoos on the left-hand side of your board. The parks will give you an on-game bonus that typically you get at the beginning of each round, but the zoos will just give you straight-up points. So it's nice to have a mixture of both. And those are the 6 different actions a player can do on their turn. And after 4 rounds, there's a little bit of cleanup. If you notice, there's these little chips here that you can flip over on your player board. You check to see if you have the majority of any of them. One of them is if you have the most walls built, or if you have the most zoos built, or if you have the most buildings built, or if you have the most victory points currently, or if you're currently the highest on the city hall track. You'll then get to flip that token over, and at the end of the game, you'll get 4 points. And you'll remove any of these anchor tokens that maybe you have put on your cards, because some of the cards will have abilities that you can only use once per round. So they give you these to kind of plop on there, so that way you know that you've already triggered it that round and don't accidentally trigger it twice, because that would be bad. Actually, it'd be really good, but not fair for the rest of it. And then you pass the first player token to the left. And the game comes with 2 of them. One of them is Stefan Feld, and the other one is this thing. Always use the Feld one. And after 8 rounds of that, players will tally up any victory points on buildings that they've built, and any special scoring on the bottom of buildings that they've built. They'll also see if they have any bonus points from these abbots when they're sent down to the bottom there. You'll gain an extra point for each of the different colors of buildings depending on where the abbots had landed. Also, you'll score victory points for your walls that you built and flipping over those tokens on your player board, and you'll also score victory points for how high you got on the city hall track. And the player with the most points is the victor. So that was an overview of Hamburg. It's a good game. It's a solid game. I actually really enjoy it. I enjoy the multi-use cards, and there are a ton of them. But more on that later, though. There's enough player interaction in the game to keep it interesting. You know, players are racing or jockeying for position on different tracks, and or you want those majorities first. And if you get those majorities for like having the most victory points or the most buildings built early on, that's pretty easy to get. So there's a lot of push to complete some of those goals really quick. So I like the amount of player interaction in it. The multi-use cards, like I said, is awesome. The art is fine. I actually I guess I do like the art. It's that nice, clean Euro look to it. And there is quite a bit of art on the cards. Every card in the game is different. There is a little bit of repeating art, but every card in the game is different, which is crazy because I think there's like 250 or 300 cards. So that's a lot of cards. But here is where there are some issues that I have with the game, and I think most people that I've played it with have all had similar issues too. The iconography on this game is not the best. It's kind of rough. And there is a booklet that it explains what every single card does. And definitely your first, not 1, 2, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, all your games of this, that book is going to get passed around the table. Now, I heard that they were making cards that have text on them to say what each of the cards does, because the iconography is just rough. It is rough. Woof. But they do make those cards, but they're like $20 on top of the MSRP that is way too high, like $100 on this game anyways. So I hate to bring the cost of this game into this review, but I have to, because I feel like that is definitely going to be a deal breaker for a lot of people. For instance, I really like Feld's games, and this is no exception. This is a great game, but I can't recommend this game over another game published by Queen Games called Merlin. I can't suggest getting Hamburg instead of getting Merlin and probably Feld's most famous game, Castles of Burgundy. You can get both of those games, which are fantastic, for the same price of Hamburg. And I think both of those games, I like them better than Hamburg. So it's kind of, if you're really a Feld fan, you will like this game, despite the maybe subpar and sometimes confusing iconography. But it's almost like a slap in the face that you have to pay extra money now to get these cards that have the text on them. I mean, I guess it's because they wanted to make it language independent, and giving you a rule book is much cheaper than printing a whole bunch of different versions of these cards with different languages. But man, it really makes it, in my opinion, a tough sell to people who don't know 100% that they're going to like this game, because it's a little bit of a gamble. Like I said, the game is definitely staying in my collection. I greatly enjoy it. A lot of good things going for it. For one, it's not really that difficult to teach either. It is hard to, I don't want to say hard to play, but your first few games you're playing it, you're like, holy cow, I can't figure out how to do anything. But you know, it's definitely a game you get better at, and you better plan on playing it more than one time, not only for the price, but to get the most fulfilling experience from it. Because your first play, you're definitely just muscling your way through it. Almost like his other game, Bonfire, which is fantastic, but man, that is a rough teach and a rough play your first couple games. It has a big, nice board. A lot of the spaces on the board are almost just placeholders where, like, you know, this is where you set the cards. This is where you set this bank of money. This is where you set this bank of pink meeples. This is where you set this bank. You know, so I kind of feel like the board isn't necessary, or really that I guess the board doesn't need to be as big as it is, because the game is largely about the cards and building your tableau of your city, and then on the other side of the board, on the other side of your player board, your parks and zoos. Well, in mentioning the player board is really neat. I do appreciate how you have those little slider tracks for the different disasters, and man, from a strategy point, sometimes it's not too bad if you let a disaster go. Like say you don't have any people on your player board and you let the famine take them all. Yeah, big whoopee. But sometimes it's not worth that gamble. You just need to burn that card to ensure that, you know, there's not civil unrest in your city. Which, now we're mentioning it, the theme, I feel like the theme is kind of just hit or miss. Really don't feel like I'm trying to become the first mayor of Hamburg or whatever the theme of it is. But the price you do pay for those fun little sliders on your player board is the setup. So you gotta take all those little pieces and put them all in there. And oddly enough, I kind of think I like this game best at 2 players. It runs at a nice click. Man, playing this game though with multiple players who haven't played it, the teach is okay, but when they start getting these cards and they're like, what does this do? You know, back to the iconography thing, and you're like, well, you try to explain to them what they do, but you know, at some point they may not want to show what their entire hand does. So man, that little booklet just gets passed around and around and around, and it does tie up the game. It does slow down the game, slows down the pace. Kind of wish they would have put 2 of them in the box. Meh. Don't know, that may have been nice. Yeah, overall, I do enjoy the game. I really like it. It's staying in the Beard's collection. Has enough player interaction for me. Everything about it is nice. The production, the cards are a nice quality. Your player board's nice dual layer board, so when the table gets bumped, nothing shuffles around. However, the print on mine, the print underneath is shifted, which is, you know, a little bummer, but whatevs. The dice are nice, big chunky dice. And the game does have enough variety in it that every time you play it, it does feel quite a bit different. So I guess I do recommend this game if you already have played and enjoy Feld's other games like Bonfire and Merlin and Castles and Carpe Diem. If you already have those and just want more of his stuff, this is definitely a great game. It is. But if you don't have those games and you're not familiar with his works, and or if you think that this sounds like something you would absolutely enjoy, I would definitely suggest you have to play this one before you purchase it, because it may not be for you. But it is staying in the Beard's collection, and thank you for watching another episode of Rolling with the Beard. Please consider clicking that subscribe button and click that like button, because it helps me out in the YouTube's algorithms. Anyways, thanks again for watching.